Darth Sidious has always seemed to have a complicated relationship with Vader's power. In the beginning, Palpatine selected Anakin to be his apprentice because of his potential as the Jedi Chosen One. Not only would he stick it to the Jedi to corrupt their symbol of balance, but the raw abilities of Skywalker would make the finest apprentice possible. But once that potential was cut down on Mustafar, Sidious became frustrated and disappointed with Lord Vader. He initially attempted to try to help his student, to break through his limits and gain back his powers, believing they were largely mental, but that unfortunately yielded little fruit for the Empire. More recently though, we discovered a comic where Palpatine seems to do a complete 180 on this. Instead of trying to help Vader grow in power, he purposefully does things to hold him back. In today's Holocron, we are going to analyze Sidious's complicated views on Vader's power, and why he changed his mind about trying to help him, as well as what happened when Vader approached him and asked for more training as a Sith Lord. The most curious part of Palpatine and Vader's relationship as master and apprentice is that they didn't really act that way. Vader knelt before his master, showing fealty to the man who is now the Emperor of the Galaxy, but Palpatine simply refers to his apprentice as my friend. Very rarely did Palpatine act as Vader's teacher, only giving him harsh lessons through manipulation and punishment, cruel tests of loyalty at best. We have little to no accounts of Darth Sidious ever actually giving Vader a Sith education, and there is a reason for this. It's not as though their training happened off screen. Very little to no training between Vader and Sidious took place at all. Now when we say that, what we mean is that while Palpatine gave his apprentice pointers here or there about using the dark side, he never invested time and attention into tutoring Vader. Their relationship was very unlike how Anakin was used to being trained by Obi-Wan, and how Sidious had even previously trained Maul or Dooku. According to the books and comics that take place in the years 19 to 18 BBY, Palpatine instructed Vader on how to properly unleash his anger. He taught him against being numbed by grief, how to bury his rage deep down until it became an inner storm from which he could draw power. These were all secrets of the dark side that Palpatine himself used, but Vader either disregarded these teachings or struggled to internalize them. Sidious always taught about wisely holding his rage back, keeping his anger as a valuable resource that could be used later. But Vader never did this, and instead unleashed his wrath whenever he felt like it, which resulted in the deaths of many Imperials. Palpatine reached out to his apprentice and attempted several times to get him invested in Sith teachings. He gave Vader access to several Sith holocrons, and even provided him with the surviving pages of the Journal of Darth Malgus. All of this was in the hopes of giving his apprentice inspiration. But Sidious found out the hard way. But Sidious would learn the hard way what the Jedi had learned when trying to train Anakin. He was not interested in histories or theory. He cared for action, lightsabers, starships. Both Anakin and Vader wanted the boots on the ground effect, and to feel the power of the Force in a hands-on way. But this wasn't the only roadblock keeping Palpatine from beginning Vader's training. The Dark Lord's obsession with Jedi was another problem. The rage that Vader felt for his former compatriots clouded all other judgment. He was convinced that if any Jedi remained, that they were a threat to the Empire and needed to be eradicated. This of course was a cover. Vader's desire to slaughter every one of them, who he had felt betrayed by. Vader was driven by the fact that he wanted to prove just how superior he was to even the greatest of the Jedi. Sidious, though, was annoyed by Vader's Jedi obsession. More than once in both comics and novels, Sidious demands that Vader cease pursuing the Jedi, to stop busying himself with old, inferior friends. For the Emperor, he needed help running the new Empire. There were so many things that had to be done now that they were the rulers of the entire galaxy. But because Vader was chasing ghosts, Palpatine was having to shoulder all of the burden himself. Along with this, he told Vader that he didn't really believe the Jedi were a threat at all anymore. They had been defeated, their order crushed, their spirits broken beyond repair. For 1,000 years, the Sith had remained in hiding, watching their enemies relish being in a seat of power. Now it was the Jedi's turn to slink into the shadows, to watch the Sith reign supreme. Sidious got a very deep satisfaction from all of this, and liked the idea of leaving some Jedi alive just so they could suffer, just so they could watch. At least this is how we always understood it to be, but our entire views were shaken from what we read from a comic. That comic in question is Star Wars Empire #1. The comic takes place closer to 0 BBY. In it, Vader is summoned by his master, who gives him a mission. A small party of stormtroopers were sent to the planet of Darguli, but were murdered while trying to collect a fee. Why Vader is summoned, though, is soon revealed. The murder weapon was a lightsaber. Believing this to be evidence of Jedi activity, Sidious instructs Vader to go and investigate. But shockingly, Darth Vader, for the first time ever, rebukes. 2 decades ago, he would have already been on his starship after hearing the word lightsaber. Yet here, he's not interested. Instead, he says this: "My master, I have so much to learn at your side. Only now do I feel I'm truly beginning to understand the power of the dark side." Vader then goes even further, saying that surely this could be dealt with by someone else, since they had so many assassins and inquisitors at their disposal to handle such petty vigilantes. This is rare. Vader is asking for training. This is something Palpatine long had pined for, but Sidious cuts him off and says this: "Lord Vader, you forget yourself. You're not some young beast nipping at his master's heel. You are a Dark Lord of the Sith. The destiny of the Sith and the Jedi are intimately tied up in your person, and this concerns both faiths equally." This is a complete role reversal from how they are used to operating. Here, Vader is the one asking to be excused from the Jedi hunt so that he can stay behind and learn more about the dark side and more about the Sith from his master. But Palpatine snaps at him. He makes him go away, tossing aside his concerns about learning. This interaction betrays 2 things: Vader's own internal growth, and the fear that that growth has inspired now in Sidious. Let's back up a few years. After about a year of hunting, Vader's search for the Jedi had dried up, and his searches yielded no more results. Now he could not feel the hole inside of himself with Jedi bloodshed. Now he was forced to confront what he really wanted out of his life. And this is when Vader started seeing things his master's way. Vader goes through a small change. He desires to focus all of his efforts on bringing about stability to a chaotic galaxy. The Empire represented that stability, and as its enforcer, his life's work was to enforce its will. After all, that was the peace that he had always wanted to make with Padme, and in that pursuit, he had begun to study the dark side with more fervor than before. What he had discovered was a wealth of power that had been promised long before. Within him sprouted a religious devotion to the dark side for the first time ever. We can clearly see this in A New Hope when he gets set off by Admiral Mati's mockery. At this point in time, the dark side has become more to Vader. Now for Sidious, this should have been a joyous thing. He had tried for years to get Vader to see this very mindset. But by the time his apprentice finally came around, Sidious had changed his mind. Truthfully, he cared nothing for the Jedi just like before. This was a cop-out, an excuse. Sidious didn't start worrying about the Jedi until the beginning of the Galactic Civil War. Sidious did not want the Jedi to be a rallying symbol for the rebels. In truth, Sidious dispatched Vader because he wanted to keep his apprentice stuck in his old ways and in his old mindset. He wanted to distract Vader from seeking knowledge of the dark side, all to keep him weak. Vader was a true threat to him at this point, and the fact that he actively wanted to learn, that made him extremely dangerous. More dangerous than any Jedi. Palpatine knew that Vader's hatred towards him gave him away and a desire to overthrow him. He knew that if Vader was at all capable, he would rise against his master and take the throne of the Emperor by force. After all, this story occurs after the events of The Force Unleashed, so Vader has already made a bid to overthrow his master using Starkiller, but has failed twice. But we believe there's an even deeper meaning behind this shift in Palpatine's mentality. In the book, The Dark Lord: The Rise of Darth Vader, Sidious states that he knew that even if Anakin had not burned on Mustafar, that he would try to overthrow him. In fact, he'd be surprised if Anakin didn't try at all. And yet, he still wanted to try to get Vader back to 100% full power. That was until now. We have a theory as to why this is. While it has not been officially confirmed in any source that we've read, all the external evidence points towards it. The theory is this: Sidious didn't truly want Anakin as a full apprentice. He wanted him as a host. Sidious's entire study was centered around one thing: establishing an empire that would rule, but not rule momentarily, rule forever. He intended for the rule of two to end with him, whereafter he would establish the Sith rule of one, reigning supreme and eternal. To keep himself alive, he would use the secret of essence transfer to move his spirit from one vessel to another. But in truth, the only vessel he really desired was Anakin's. He knew the boy was born from the divine collection of midichlorians, giving him an insane potential that has never been seen before. Sidious wished to inhabit that body, to gain access to all of the power for himself. In fact, this had actually been the plan of Plagueis' master Darth Tenebris, who had foreseen the coming of the same Chosen One and prepared to inhabit his body. This is why Sidious says to Yoda, "Soon Darth Vader will become more powerful than either of us." He wasn't necessarily bragging that he had a strong apprentice. He was subtly championing that soon, Vader's power will surpass even what Sidious is capable of, and then that power would be his. But the damage done to his body on Mustafar destroyed all of Palpatine's hopes and dreams. So he took out his anger on Vader, putting him in a painful and a restrictive suit. He now hoped to perhaps get Vader back to 100 so that he could inhabit his apprentice's body, maybe even build a better suit, or simply heal the body using Sith alchemy. But Lord Vader was never able to fully break through those barriers. Soon enough, Sidious came to realize that if Vader ever did have a breakthrough, then his first act would be revenge against his master. So the Emperor had to change his plan. Instead of using essence transfer to inhabit Anakin's broken form, he would create a myriad of his own clone bodies instead. But now, the trick was to ensure that Vader would never get strong enough to overthrow him before his experimentation with essence transfer was completed. But again, this is just our own theory based on the evidence and what it points towards. This explains the sudden change of Palpatine's mind, where he goes from trying to push Vader towards greater power, and then now trying to hold him back from that power. But in order to unravel all of the machinations of the Sith, one must be well informed of their movements. Luckily for you, we post holocrons almost every day, and with that we have a special holocron that we are making right now. Darth Vader Dark Times, covering Lord Vader's entire 20-year reign leading directly into the events of A New Hope. So stay tuned for that full documentary video. But here's the big question. What would have happened if Palpatine had actually trained Vader? What if he had indulged him in this moment, teaching him the ancient secrets of the Sith? How powerful could Vader really become? Let us know your thoughts on this lore in the comments down below. And as always, my friends, thank you for joining us here today in the archives, and may the Force be with you.